Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
It's a gorgeous day here in Kisumu. Welcome to the Great Debaters Contest. We continue our focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. Our hashtag is GDC for SDGs. I am Mariam Bashar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Tackling Sustainable Development Goal 1. The motion today is poverty of the third world is the fault of the first world. Nyamira girls versus Kisumu boys. Mariam, who's going to take the day?
Hard to tell, Austin. Proposer number 1, you may take the stage.
Onyango Ann, standing strongly to propose the motion that poverty of the first world is the fault of the first. And as I had mentioned earlier, what is poverty? This is the devastating condition that is brought out due to financial instability, mostly that is. When you talk about the third world, mostly found in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, they are referred to as third world because most of them were extremely poor and unindustrialized. An example, we have the struggling countries like Somalia. When you talk about the first world, these are countries that are believed to have political stability and development. They're industrialized. On to my first point, we have the exploitation of resources. How has it affected and how have the first world affected us? First of all, when we take the instance of exploitation of resources, you find that the Europeans, let's talk about the first world in this perspective, that they have come to our countries, they have exploited all resources. It is very difficult for you to start in a race where someone is ahead up. Okay, we have the robber baron theory that states that if I am rich and you are poor, it must be the case that you have been the victim of my exploitation and oppression. And to my second point, we have the issue of brain drain. We are being told that for a country to be developed, we need skilled people, we need skilled personnel. But I'm so educated to this extent that due to the love of money, I go to look for greener pastures, forgetting that what I leave behind is suffering. And let me tell you one thing, we need skilled personnel to help us in the development, and also we need food, we need clean air, engineering. And when you look at that, in that perspective, brings about our development. But what about these people that have gone and they have flown away from our countries, going to look for greener pastures, leaving us from scratch? Very difficult to development. I know you know. The first world countries have brought about political instability. And I'll give you one case. We have the Belgium, who has really affected Congo. They have exploited all their resources, which has led to a serious war as the people fight. Until now, as I'm speaking, facing you. Belgium is busy extracting oil from Congo and shipping it back to their country. Their country develops, leaving Congo in a crisis. Right now, as we're speaking, I bear you witness that Congo is one of the poorest countries with the richest resources in Africa. Come to think about it, is it not being, are the third world countries really at fault? No, they're not. Trust me in this. The first world countries are to be blamed for our poverty. They're to be blamed for every difficulty that we face. Let me tell you, first world countries have brought a lot. Thank you.
Gentlemen, you have 3 minutes for your opening statements.
I'm Billy Abraham from Kisumu Boys. I stand here today to oppose the motion that states that poverty in the third world is a fault of the first world. Poverty is an emerging issue today in the world, an emerging issue number 4 in the world. When we talk about poverty, we are talking about the state of privation, lack of basic necessities, lack of food, lack of shelter, lack of healthcare facilities, lack of proper education. According to the World Bank report in 2014, nearly a half of the world's population, that's 3 billion, are living in poverty. And according to the UNICEF, 22,000 children die daily due to poverty. Then, that leaves us with a question, who should we blame? The first world, these are countries that are industrially developed. The second world, the first world rather, are countries that are industrially developed, while on the other hand, the third world are countries that are lagging behind industrially. I'll start off. Confucius says, that's a Chinese philosopher, that a country well governed, poverty is something to be ashamed of, and a country badly governed, wealth is something to be ashamed of. Let's look at education. The first world has steered us towards the path of education. Today I can speak in English, you can listen to me. You can talk and I can listen to you. I can write and you can read. Today, let's look at the health sector. In 2015, we had a health crisis in West Africa, Ebola outbreak. The first world came in handy to help the first world contain this contagious disease. Why are we still blaming them? Today, when we look at infrastructure, we can boast of owning airports. We can boast of having good roads. We can boast of having railway stations. We can boast of having railway lines. All these are the made of the first world. Today, when you go back to our real mind, we'll say and agree that the first world have done the bit. The first world have done the bit. What of the third world? The third world should not sit blaming the first world why or saying that the first world are to blame for their lagging behind. Look at the leaders we have in first world. They've come up with their own policies. Let's take an issue with the current crisis that has befallen Zimbabwe. Let's take an issue with Zimbabwe. You look at the leader, the economic policies adopted on the basis of indigenizing Zimbabwe and making it the country of Africans has scared out the whites. They've been left to lag behind in terms of development. That leaves us, and I want to tell you that poverty is an issue that I still consider an finished agenda in the third world, and they have themselves to blame for it, not the first world. Thank you.
We're ready for rebuttals, beginning with Nyamira Girls. You have 3 minutes.
Tracy Yoga, Nyamira Girls. As I was seated, I had lack of, until it became like a song, like a stuck gramophone, like a dirge, lack of. Third world countries do not lack in anything. They're just inadequate. Inadequate education, inadequate government policies, inadequate blah, blah, blah. There's nothing like lack of. On to my first point. The first world countries have used third world countries as electronic waste dumping sites. Like I can see numerous cameras rolling and things to do with electronics and gadgets, but they're not of our own. They are inventions from where? From the West. Why do we stand cockily, tall, to embrace such things? Yet Africans can come up with, I'm very sure, more very nice, very advanced electronic devices. We all talk of big phones, big cars, big everything. Well, in the real sense, they're just importations. They're just electronic waste devices, sorry to say. Then the multinational industries. These are industries like the Coca-Cola company. I'm very sure each of us enjoys a drink from there, right? Yeah, that was rhetoric. Then these third world countries, our resources are being used here. Take, for example, our land. The ratio in sharing these multi-industrial agreements should be 50-50, should be for the benefit of the country and the benefit of the foreigner who invested here. In the real sense, they end up repatriating money back to their motherland and leaving third world countries stricken in poverty. And then we are saying they're not to be blamed. That is barbaric. And then there's also the issue of dictation of market value. Who doesn't know that the strength of our shilling is compared to the strength of the US dollar? We all compare our ratios, the monies that we have, to the strength of these dominating worlds known as the first world. Our economy cannot realize growth if we keep up comparing the level of our currencies against their strengths. Ours will diminish, theirs will thrive In what? To what end? Why are we standing tall to embrace such things? And then there's also the textile industry. I'm very sure we're in the hot Kisumu, and history dictates that there was some Kisumu cotton industry, sorry. Where is it? Anyone who knows where is it, see me after this and tell me. Chase Yoga, Nyamira Girls.
Kisumu boys will hear your rebuttal. You have 3 minutes.
Abraham Lincoln once said that you can fool some of the people all of the time, all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. I simply stand to say that I believe the head stands before the toes. So I would just like to look at the proposers, our sisters from Nyamira. I simply should tell you that you are simply stating an enemy to Africa and to third world countries as a whole. So the first thing, I'll speak about corruption. Governance is an issue in African countries. You look at the doctor strike, which has taken roughly 3 months. And we have a stable system of governance. So what to ask ourselves is, where are our leaders? Instead of just simply piling it on the first world countries, these are allies. I would like to state that you talked, for the first proposer, you rather made a careless mistake. You talked about brain drain. Could you imagine a doctor in Kenya who has gone on strike for 3 months? And then you get in America itself, we have better wage rates. We have better employment opportunities. I even simply fly there. I'll just run there. We also have something on food security. The Galana Kulalu Food Security Project program, which was rolled out, was supposed to bring fruits by March 2016. That is what was planned. But we found out that 7 billion shillings was lost in the pilot program. 7 billion. So what we should just simply look at in fact, we had inflation in the country. We had to export flour from Mexico. And as a Luya and an African, I believe the most important thing is ugali. The prices of ugali has increased. This, I believe, to me as a Luya, is simply as an insult. I also look at the LEM policies. The president is looking at Kaimenyi. The previous time we had to bring laptops. Oh, Kaimenyi, I would like us to bring some laptops, 1.2 million. We want to please voters, in fact. So for the class 1, yes. Well, what is it that this student who is coming to use this laptop is hungry? The teacher is in total poverty. What are we simply looking at? You look at the climate change. In fact, in the natural hazards, mostly on the Horn of Africa, countries like Djibouti themselves, we have hunger. In hunger itself, we have deaths, which results to reduced labor supply in the country. This leads to low development, which then leads to poverty. And then we complain. We have the illiteracy levels in the country. We have fewer doctors. And sometimes we even have one teacher teaching more than 100 students. This is just in Africa, the first world countries. And then we simply want to stand and simply, instead of training this personnel we want, we simply blame it on brain drain. I simply stand my grounds and tell my sisters from Nyamira Girls, I believe we are on the same boat, but with a divided mind. Just sit down, be humble, let us think on the same perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the audience. The proposition have been asked if the third world, if developing countries are the cause of the lack of development in the third world, then how come we always run to them for financial aid for development purposes? And the opposition have been asked, how are third world countries to develop if they're being exploited and their resources being taken advantage of by first world countries? We'll have them respond. Third proposer, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm Jail Colleen from Nyamira Girls High School. There was a question which was posed. Why is it that we blame the first world countries for our poverty, yet we go to them for support? Let me tell you one thing. Initially, they used to give us grants and donations. But over time, it has changed. They're not giving us huge amount of money in the name of loans, which are difficult for us to pay. Why is it? Because as we'll be servicing this debt, we'll be developing our country, because we'll be not thinking of like, let's develop our country, let us be like the first world countries. We'll be thinking of, let us work so that we may pay this money to the first world countries. Now you see, through that, we'll not be developing our country, but we'll be like making our country to be what? Poor and poorer and poorer. And I believe your question is answered. On to my first point. The third world countries are referred to as trial and error sites. Why am I saying this? In the US and also the European countries, there's a rule that no one is allowed to throw any electronic device, even if the electronic device is damaged. What do they do with these devices? They just go and then they make them again, knowing that they are not good. Then they come and just take it to third world country, because they are ready, they are going to take it. Through this, the first world countries are making us to be undeveloped, and initially we become what? Poorer. Then another thing, the prices of goods. The first world countries have undermined our culture. The ship of clothes, like we are told, the Kikomi industry. Another thing is, the first world countries, they are using this trick. They bring goods in bulk. You remember in Kenya, we are making products like rulers. We are also making things like matchbox. But you find a Kenyan doesn't want to buy that thing that a fellow Kenyan has made, because they think that, because we feel inferior to the Europeans, we cannot use them, because Kenyan things are of low quality, but those made by the people from the first world countries are of high quality. This making us making us not be able to use our products, but we depend on the product of the first world countries. This brings undevelopment of the country, which leads to poverty. Like, if you go, those who have the helix set, you'll find the ruler made in China. China is among the great 8 countries in the world. So with this, I'll say that the poverty of the third world countries is as a result of the first world countries. Thank you.
Gentlemen, you have 3 minutes to respond to the audience.
Tell me, have you ever seen flies in a child's eye, or heard their angry cries in the middle of a night? Believe me, this is not an illusion. It is simply a reflection of the disguised reality in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Elvis Omolo from Kisumu Boys High School, opposing the motion that states poverty of the third world is the fault of the first world. I'll go straight to the question, and I'd like to take quite a practical approach in my answer. Let's picture of an old man in Ukambani, having a boat, having a fish net, and maybe a fish lane. And here I am in Kisumu, very close to the lake, but I lack the equipment. What should I do? On the first opportunity I'll get, I'll go to Ukambani and tell that old man to stop joking, give me the equipment so that I can put them to use. Let's look at the better part of colonization. It brought to us Christianity. Christianity led to education. Education led to enlightenment. And enlightenment led to economic development. Thank you so much for your question, though. And then, it is quite illogical to fault the first world for the poverty of the third world, when especially we all know that the US, Canada, the whole of Europe, and many other developed countries are sending untold billions to the third world as aids. Then what happens? The money do not reach to the people to whom it was intended for. For instance, let's look at people such as Joseph Mobutu Sese Seko and most recently, Yahya Jammeh. These are men to have known to amass a fortune amounting to nearly their country's total national debt. My question is, will they have done so without converting all the foreign aid, financial foreign aid, and maybe a bit of the local business proceedings to their personal accounts? Then, who is to blame for the poverty in such nations? Secondly, I'd like us to think of a country such as Somalia. Since the fall of the dictator Said Barre in 1991, the nation has been experiencing series of wars ranging from the Islamic Court Union, Al-Shabaab, and other militia groups which are led by their clan warlords. I believe that we all know that when there is war or any political upheaval in a nation, then the safety, the stability, and the security is compromised, leading to what we call economic stagnation. Ladies and gentlemen, without these basics, then the natural resources in those nations cannot, and will not be harvested, be it individually or collectively, and no amount of education, talent, or technological know-how will allow the people to reap the benefit of their own labor. Then, who do we blame for the same? I really like my dad, and he always told me that, you know what, Elvis? When a man gives you fish, then he's fed you for a day. But when a man teaches you how to fish, then he's fed you for a lifetime. They have given us fish by providing loans and aids. They have taught us how to fish by availing various scholarship programs. What do we need more? Is this the way we show our gratitude? Shalom.
Final statements. Nyamira girls, you have 1 minute.
Fellows, once a man sat in this audience, told me that reading is good, and reading opens up thick skulls. Brethren, Elvis Omolo, how I wish that you read the book, How Europeans Underdeveloped Africa, by Michael Rodney. So you know, I won't be humble in the face of poverty. Wake up. Smell the coffee. Poverty has this tendency of stretching, and it stretch like a chewing gum. And also, the history of poverty is the history of mankind. Onyango Ann, standing to speak again. Let me keep you in the light that some goods that have been indicated not to be sold in EU, to mean that they're not to be sold in European Union countries, are brought to Africa, then what are you? You're being taken lowly. Let me tell you one thing. Put facts and factuals together and come up with a reasonable conclusions. Don't just throw words. This future is meant for me and you. Think.
Gentlemen, you have a minute.
Well, much have been said, but now it's my time to tell you a bit of what I am. I hate the terms first world and third world because we all live in one world. And I would like all of you to know that my first world is humanity. My second world is humanism. Yet here I am in the third world, being a mere human being. I might not be a Martin Luther King, but I truly have a dream that once the third world will be free of corruption. It will be free of nepotism. It will be free of tribalism. It will be free of racism, so that the third world will no longer have to crawl with the ability of walking, so that it will no longer have to walk with the ability of running, or rather will it have to run with the ability of flying. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to be a Barack Obama or an Aristotle to realize that this change will not come about but pointing accusatory fingers to the first world. I believe that this change will never be orchestrated by theorists. This change will never be diagnosed by doctors. This change will never be constructed by engineers. This change will never be litigated by lawyers. But you can initiate the change by simply joining the movement and helping our nation instead of saying that the poverty of the third world is the fault of the first world. Thank you.
Let me start with the girls and straight on speak to Tracy. I think you stand out for me in your team. That was very lovely. I think you were very comfortable and you spoke at ease, and that was quite good for you. Your submissions were quite fair as well as the cross-examination. However, that point on electronic waste, and you give the example of cameras being electronic waste, I don't think they bring in second-hand or thrown-off cameras to the country. I think that could have been easily challenged and cross-examined. So you want to have facts that can be substantiated. Currency comparison and the other examples that you gave, that was very good, and it showed that you had mastered the topic very well. Jael, fair tackling of questions, and as well, good start for your team as well with the examples. But however, the example of Belgium and Congo, it's good to cite the source, all right? So you don't just make assumptions that this is what they're doing, extracting oil and the likes. Kisumu boys, I want to first address Elvis because you were outstanding. That was very good of a debater, very good start, very good speaker, very good examples, your thought sequence, and even the good, powerful ending. That was very commendable for your team, and for that you scored your team quite some good marks. So congratulations for that. Ben, good cross-examination, your passion as well, and mastery of topic. Ben, you're also very persuasive. I think that was the element that we saw, very free when you come to the stage. Billy, good examples. I thought maybe you guys could have used the element of persuasion, that we are our own problem. When you talk about Zimbabwe, for example, I think you would have given more examples based on that and tell us, listen, we are the ones to blame. But the examples of corruption and the likes, that was commendable.
Nyamira girls, the judges awarded you 69%. Please give them a round of applause. Kisumu boys, the judges saw it fit to award you 73%. You're our winners for the debate.
Congratulations to the gentlemen of Kisumu boys, and of course a job well done to the ladies as well. Thank you to our audience for being participative and being with us, and those of you at home for watching. I have been your host, Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Catch you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.